All right, thank you so much. Welcome to another episode of the Sales Story and a Tip podcast. The Sales Story and a Tip podcast, of course, is a Sales Game Changers podcast. My name is Fred Diamond. I'm the co-founder of the Institute for Excellence in Sales, and Chaz, the host of over 720 Sales Game Changers podcasts. You can find the Sales Game Changers podcast today on Apple Podcasts. If you're not a subscriber, go up and subscribe and give us a 5-star review, or you can watch it on YouTube, as a lot of people do. And if you're watching this on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, leave a comment. We'd be happy to see that. Again, you could listen to all of our past Sales Game Changers podcast episodes at salesgamechangerspodcast.com. And on the Sales Story and a Tip podcast, I bring on a sales leader. I say, tell us about yourself, tell us a great sales story, and give us a tip that you learned from that story. So I got Chaz Horn on today. Chaz, I'm really excited. Give us an introduction to you and who you are.
Yes. Thank you for inviting me, Fred, and congratulations on 720 episodes. That is no small feat. So I'm celebrating 8 years in business this month. And 8 years ago, I had worked for many other companies over 3 decades. And there was a big gap that was always missing in all the companies that I worked for as an employee, a sales leader, a sales manager. And as I worked for people, the founder, my boss would say, could you help Jennifer or Bill? And so I was always put in that role. Finally, with everything that I developed over the 30 plus years, I didn't have a name for it back then. I developed what I call the B2B Blueprint to predictable sales. I started my business to fill the gap for those B2B businesses out there with the B2B Blueprint to predictable sales. And I'll just give a brief overview, as I believe your listeners will find value in this. It basically boils down to 5 things. Not my hand, but I have 5 fingers. It's TABS, TTABS. And yes, my TABS has 2 T's. Tactic is what you do to reach your prospect. Technique is how you execute the tactic. Attitude, nothing happens without the right attitude, but it's much deeper than that. It's about our intention. Your intention will attract or repel. And then behaviors, that's the key performance indicator, and strategy. That's the big thing that a lot of businesses are missing. You have to have a marketing strategy to identify the main need and want so you can speak to it in such a way that you attract people to you because they have confidence that you and your solution can solve their problem. So that's what my business is, the mastery of B2B sales, and I help small businesses identify, attract new prospects and convert them into new clients.
All right, Chaz Horn, I'm excited. Tell us a great sales story.
Well, I talk about tabs for most of my sale, and I think a lot of your audience can appreciate this. They focus on TAB, the tactic, the attitude, and the behavior. The tactic many times is cold outreach. The attitude is one of tenacity. And then the behavior is massive amounts of whatever that tactic is that you're doing. A lot of people are sending out DMs, emails, cold calling. And so I remember I was just sick and tired of being sick and tired of doing the stinking cold calls. And so back then, I was sitting in front of a building about to do another round of in-person cold calls. And I thought, there's got to be a better way. By the way, the questions that you ask yourself determine the direction of your life. Ask the right questions, your brain will come up with the answer. So I kept asking myself, what can I do? How can I improve this? And as I kept asking myself this question, as I was going from cold call to cold call, a thought came to mind. We had a person who was a consultant that was helping the business that I worked for. His name is Joe. And he also had a CEO roundtable. And we would go there and visit with all these CEOs, and we would discuss things about how to help one another, what they're doing in this area and whatnot. And you just learn from one another. I wasn't involved in the roundtable, but I did talk with Joe on a regular basis. And so as I thought, how can I have leverage so I'm not reaching out to just one on one on one on one to people who don't even know who I am, And typically, they had already received many cold calls, whether it was on the phone, in person, email, or direct message. So I was thinking strategy, and I wasn't thinking strategy at the time here, at that moment in time, but I was thinking leverage. So I was thinking about my resources, and I was thinking, wow, Joe has a roundtable of a group of CEOs who are in my target audience. What if I could have him have me speak to the CEOs, leverage? And at that point in time, I was selling a technology, um, cybersecurity. And so I could talk to them about how they're vulnerable and how to protect themselves. And he said, you know what, Chaz, that's a great idea. So I put together a presentation and had an amazing conversation with these CEOs. There was 12 of them. And I gave them some information. I told them how they're vulnerable. We had an open discussion back and forth. Afterwards, we got together and they go, wow, I didn't realize that we're vulnerable if we don't do this. And one of them came to me and said, you know what? uh, our POS system, our payment system, this was a restaurant owner with 19 locations. He said it was just hacked and 90 people credit card information was stolen. And the company who allowed them to use Visa said, if you don't become compliant, then you're going to lose your privileges to take Visa any longer. And so, as a restaurant owner, you lose your Visa, you're going to go out of business. So, timing, great. Multiple people. That one person, that one business owner, because of that, I received a 500. It ended up being because we redid all of the infrastructure, the servers, everything to make them PCI compliant. And it ended up being $525,000. So think about this, hundreds and hundreds of cold calls. I never received that. 1 hour meeting. I obviously had to prepare for it. A discussion afterwards, and that leverage with the strategy, looking at multiple people being introduced with a third party endorsement. They already saw me as a potential authority as long as I gave them valuable information that resonated with them. And so that led to that $525,000 sale.
Wow. So that's a great story. And actually, a couple things come to mind. One is you had to have been invited to give, the presentation, et cetera. So you had to
Right.
have built trust. And, a couple things. You need to be associated. It's not just be associated with the right people, but a lot of times people talk about referrals and things like that. And, people say, well, gee, if anybody knows anybody who needs a better IT solution, well, you got to be real specific and you got to be talking to the right people who are in the room with those people. Give us a tip that you take away from that great story.
Right. So I heard one of your other podcasts. I think it's your most recent one. And the gentleman was talking about building trust with people and whatnot. And when you come in contact with people, you never know who you're communicating with. And treat everyone. I talked about tabs. So
Mhm.
that day it went to TABS, or I added S in the technique. The A, intention to serve, is a value I live by and I started to live by back then. So anybody who came into my life, I wanted to be curious, I wanted to learn about. And Joe is somebody who I developed a relationship with, and I knew him from my past employer to this employer. And we had been going back and forth, and I'd been asking him questions, I had been giving him information. So since that relationship was built, there was trust there. He understood my capabilities. He really didn't give it a second thought. we went back and forth to see how it would work or whatnot, but
Yeah,
always treat each and every person that comes into your life with respect, empathy, and look to serve. Go Giver, a great book on the subject. And Zig Ziglar's old quote, I'll probably butcher it a little bit, but he said, if you give, you'll get everything you want in life if you just help enough other people get what they need. And if
absolutely.
you live by that with the right intention, and I say this to my clients and prospects all the time, um, if you go with the intention to serve and not sell, you will attract and not repel. And that's not just about prospects and clients, that's about people in general.
All right. Once again, that's a great story and the great tips as well. I want to thank Chaz Horn for being on today's Sales Story and a Tip podcast. My name is Fred Diamond.